Turning now to SeaDAS's management of a color bar that we would add to an image like this. The toolbar has a button that takes us directly there, located here. You'll notice in the file export other we have color bar. Those are equivalent functions. When you choose that, you get this dialog here, which lets you control every aspect of the color bar, whether it's oriented horizontally or vertically, and various control over text, where it's located, and how it maps to the data. Okay, you can at any time preview the settings that you've chosen by clicking this, and it will present a little window showing the current color bar that would be created if you finalize this. One thing to note here for chlorophyll, it's obviously using a logarithmic scale here, and that's because our data, we cancel this, we go to our color manager, our data is in a logarithmic scale. If I were probably incorrectly to use a linear scale, and I use the button this time to preview my color bar, it's a linear scale, okay, and with the values chosen here, okay. So just be aware that there's that linking between this management of the color palette and your color bar. Makes sense. So with logarithmic chosen again, and we click this, we can change the color bar thickness, for example, preview, and it's just a fatter bar, okay. These defaults are chosen are, create a pretty useful one. On the data labeling here, if I use 0 as a value, I don't get a 0 in the color bar because there's no 0 chlorophyll in the data. Those values are not a number in the data. Okay, so you've got to start somewhere with a positive number. But I could, looking at these, maybe, kind of round them to somewhat different set of values, preview, and they're spaced a little differently. So be aware that if you want even spacing, those defaults were already filled in. Here I can use even distribution, and I'm back to those values. Okay, I can use palette distribution. Let's see what that does. Well, that gives us a mess because every palette definition value is represented with a label, and that's certainly not what we want in this case. That would be useful in a custom palette that has very few distinct points. But anyhow, you can use an even distribution with more ticks rather than just 5. We have 6, but again the values are being chosen to distribute evenly across that logarithmic scale. Now when you go to save it, you're either going to create a layer, which is a raster layer basically or a layer in your file, or you're going to separately save this out to a image file, a PNG, typically. Okay, so with all these settings, you can play around with colors, where the the color bar is located. Let's first try creating a layer. Okay, we do that because we said it's on the inside of the image, and the lower right, this is what we get. And if we look at our layer manager, there it is listed. Okay. Now I can edit that only as so far as this, which doesn't really help us out. Okay. Also notice that if I zoom in on this, the pixelation of my characters is pretty bad. Okay, of the text. Okay, that's because it's not drawing those. It's simply it has rendered them as a raster. So let's nuke that and go back to our settings here again and save to file instead. In this case, it's going to use my data file name, add underscore color bar, and save as PNG. Okay, and I have a few graphic file formats, but PNG is the optimal one. Save that, and if I were to go to my home directory and open that, then I get quite the beautiful image that I can then use some other program to embed into the image, the data image, or use separately, or submit this along with an image for publication and let the publisher manipulate it, because this is an extremely high resolution rendering of the text and the color bar. So that's really how easy it is to create a color bar. I invite you to explore all those settings to create the custom color bar of your choice. All of this information is pretty much editable, right?